Hello everyone. Today we are here to discuss the previous year's questions from UPSC Prelims examination, and as you know, the prelims season is coming, and in a few days you will also start preparing for the prelims with your 100% efficiency. So for that you must first understand what are the previous year's papers of the UPSC, so that you get an idea कि UPSC makes questions on what lines. Although it is very difficult to predict any question, but still you must at least appreciate the types of questions that UPSC is asking. So from that perspective, we will discuss some of the questions of the previous years. We will try to give you the answer, plus also I will try to give you some additional concepts so that you can relate to what type of conceptual clarity is needed. Plus in some of the questions still they are in the current affairs due to some or the other recent news, so I will tell you the news also. So without wasting time, let's jump into the question and see what type of questions are there. This is a very interesting question. Generally UPSC does not ask such type of question, but it is very interesting. Which of the minerals are needed for contraction of the muscles? Contraction of the muscles. So our muscles are some special cells in the body. They can contract and expand, and basically muscles can only contract. They can contract. So when they contract, this leads to the movement of the joints. But something must signal them to contract. So that signal is sent by the brain. So brain has nerves coming out of it. These nerves carry the signal from the brain to the muscles, and when the brain gives the signal, then the muscle will contract. This is a simple logic. In order to transmit this signal, from through the nerves, we need some electrolytes or some charged particles. The signal in the nerves, it travels in the form of some electrical impulses, and in order to transfer the signal, we need some charged particles. So sodium ion and sodium etc. These ions, they help in the sodium, calcium etc. These help in the transfer of the signals. Iron is also needed. So all minerals are needed for muscle contraction, and more specifically if we talk about it, then calcium is needed, basically it is needed for the interaction of some proteins which helps in the contraction of muscles. So all of these minerals are needed for the contraction of muscle, so therefore this D is the correct option. So there are some concepts also which are involved in this. So therefore such type of questions are generally not asked, but there are unique questions which are asked in the UPSC prelims. This again I have discussed. Recently, just few questions back, we discussed about vitamin E. Vitamin E acts as antioxidant. Again this question was asked in 2011 कि fresh fruits and vegetables, they contain vitamin E. It is related to vitamin E, and vitamin E acts as antioxidants. And antioxidants, what they will do? They will neutralize the free radicals which are produced by the body during the metabolism or digestion process. So I have already told to you that free radicals are very reactive chemicals generated when we digest the food. These reactive chemicals can react with the nearby cells and they can damage the cells. Antioxidants react with these reactive chemicals and then neutralize them. So this was again, this was a repeat type, concept was repeated. Now the last question, a company which is making food items which does not contain trans fat, so what does the company mean by it? This is not correct. Animal fat से कोई relation नहीं है. The food product, this is correct. The oils used are not likely to damage the cardiovascular health of the consumer. This is correct. So 1 and 3 are the correct option. Now let us discuss the concept. So let us discuss the concept. It is a very interesting concept. So let's learn the concept of trans fat. Whenever we say fat, basically we mean a long carbon chain which has some particular groups attached to it. So there are two types of fat in the world, which is one is called as saturated fat and one is called as unsaturated fat. saturated fat and unsaturated fat. Saturated fat basically means कि between the carbon there are only single bonds. It can be a very long carbon chain and there is a particular group which is attached to make this a fat. Okay, we will not discuss what group is attached, but saturated fat means they only have single bond between carbons, and unsaturated means they have double bonds and they may or may not have triple bonds between them. ठीक है, तो saturated fats are example like ghee etc, butter etc. Basically animal fats are saturated, but on the other hand vegetable oil etc, these are unsaturated. For example, mustard oil etc, mustard oil, sunflower oil, peanut oil etc, all these are unsaturated fat. The concept is कि saturated fat is tasty, जैसे butter, ghee etc, they are tasty, and the food which is cooked in the saturated fat, it has a very long shelf life, it does not get spoiled very easily. So all of the processed food manufacturing companies, they prefer saturated fat, because like chips making company, biscuit making company, they want their food to be as tasty as possible and to have as long a shelf life as possible, so they prefer saturated fat. But the problem is saturated fat is costly. Animal fats जैसे कि ghee, butter etc, so they have found a mechanism by which they can convert this unsaturated fat into saturated fat. ठीक है, they can convert this fat into this fat, they can convert this into this. ठीक है, तो how can they convert this into this? They add hydrogen. ठीक है, they add hydrogen. So whenever we add hydrogen, these double bonds will be broken down and they will be replaced by single bonds, and in the remaining places hydrogen will be formed. ठीक है, hydrogen add हो जाएगा. तो कर क्या रहे हैं ये लोग? Let me just write it in the correct format. There is double bond and there can be triple bond also, and they are adding hydrogen and they are getting single bonds. ठीक है, this process is called as hydrogenation. ठीक है, तो if we use vegetable oil as the source, we will get vanaspati ghee as a result. Vanaspati ghee as a result. Vanaspati ghee is also known as dalda, or you know it by different names. Dalda is basically a company. ठीक है, तो this is hydrogenated oil. Hydrogenated oil मतलब basically you have taken oil and added hydrogen, so this is hydrogenated oil, hydrogenated fat. ठीक है, अब होता क्या है कि this vanaspati ghee or dalda has qualities of saturated fat, but it is lot cheaper because it is made from vegetable oil. जैसे कि you take any vegetable oil, add hydrogen, you will get vegetable ghee, and that is called dalda. It has qualities of saturated fat. ठीक है, but there is a problem. Whenever we do this reaction, sometimes some of the molecules they remain unsaturated. ठीक है, तो some of the molecules they remain incomplete hydrogenation. Some of the molecules they don't get completely saturated, so they can get into this format. They can get into this format. So earlier this was unsaturated fat. So earlier in this unsaturated fat, both the hydrogens are on the same side of the double bond. Just let me zoom out. In this one, both hydrogen are on the same side of the double bond. You can see both hydrogen are on the same side of the double bond. So this is called as cis unsaturated fat. Hydrogen is on the same side of the double bond, but whenever there is incomplete hydrogenation, the hydrogens tend to change their places, and this is called as trans fat, or you can say trans unsaturated fat, trans fat. ठीक है, तो trans मतलब hydrogen is on the opposite side of the double bond. ठीक है, now whenever we make hydrogenated oil, some of the molecules will become trans and therefore trans fat will be present in the hydrogenated oil. ठीक है. In nature, generally all fats will have cis unsaturated fat, but some trans fat can be present. For example, some trans fat can be present naturally in milk. Some trans fat can be present naturally in red meat, etc. But the quantity is very small. When we hydrogenate oil, we may get large quantities of trans fat. Trans fat is very very dangerous. क्योंकि ये करता क्या है? Trans fat, it is very dangerous. It is very bad for health. क्या करता है ये? It increases the level of LDL in the body, low density lipoprotein. It increases the level of the LDL in the body, and LDL increase होने से cholesterol is deposited in our blood vessels. Cholesterol is deposited in blood vessels. ठीक है, तो basically your blood vessels are like this. So what will happen? Cholesterol is a yellow sticky substance. It will be deposited in your blood vessels and your blood vessels will become choked. ठीक है, cholesterol is deposited, so blood vessels can get choked and blood is flowing from this side, but vessels are choked, so it can lead to heart attack. It can lead to high blood pressure. It can lead to bursting of the blood vessels inside the body. So trans fat is very dangerous. It leads to cholesterol deposition in the blood vessels, and it is called as plaque deposition. Plaque, arteries में plaque जम जाता है. तो basically cholesterol is depositing in the blood vessels. So basically food which contains trans fat should be avoided, and therefore the Food Safety Standards Authority of India has given certain regulations for how much amount of trans fat is permitted in the packaged food items. For example, there is a limit that packaged food items should not contain more than 2% of trans fat. Similarly, when we use the oil again and again, when we do cooking in the same oil again and again, then also trans fat increases. So therefore, the Food Safety Standards Authority of India, it has again given a regulation that the big oil users, for example McDonald's, Haldiram, etc., which use many kgs of oil per day, they should not use oil more than 2 to 3 times for cooking purposes, because that also increases trans fat. So as a common consumer of the fat, we must know that trans fat is very bad. It is created by the partial hydrogenation of unsaturated fat, and it is also created by repeated use of oil again and again for cooking purposes, and we should avoid the ingestion of trans fat as much as possible. It is good, it will be good for our health if we don't eat trans fat. ठीक है, तो इसलिए if the item does not have trans fat, it is not likely to damage the cardiovascular health. So this is true, and it is not made of hydrogenated oil. This is true. And animal fats में trans fat can be there, but it is in very small quantity. So this second statement is not ensured. If there is no trans fat, it is not ensured that they are not made from animal fats. ठीक है, तो with this statement, this C is the correct option. ठीक है. I conclude my discussion. Thank you everyone.